Erika Hitge, welcome to Life in a Garden Online. It's fantastic to have you here this evening. I have to find a new intro because I'm starting to get really bored saying the same thing. Hello, thank you for joining us. Anyway, it is fabulous to have you here this evening, so thank you for joining us. Erika, I want to just jump straight in and ask you who you are and where you come from.
Mandi, I'm a Boere meisie. I was born and raised in Joburg in an Afrikaans family years and years ago, in the 60s. So I'm just off being a hippie. And I remember from the time I was a wee dot that I've always managed to find somebody who needed help and that I could carry around under my wing. That's been my life since I was very little. If I couldn't find people, I will find a snail, or I will find a worm or a bird, but there has to be something that needs help under my arm. And this whole pursuit of finding somebody else who needs help has the consequence of sometimes not seeing when I myself need help, when I need a bit of balance, when I need support, because I'm consistently helping. In any event, this need to help brought me to a study of psychology, and I did up to a PhD in psychology. My PhD was about well-being, and I've read thousands and thousands of articles on well-being to be able to do my study. And in doing so, it's been extremely difficult to read those articles. Academics don't write in a language that is easy and digestible for people in the street. But I also realized that all those articles have so much value that I'm not carrying anybody under my wings at this point in time. I've opened my wings in the meanwhile so people can fly and, recover all by themselves. But there was so much information that I thought, doing a PhD, that little book sits and gathers dust somewhere in a library. So this information couldn't sit on my laptop. I've just thought it's too valuable, but people won't read it the way that it's written. You just can't. I only did it for academic purposes. In any event, long story about more or less where the book started. But right now I'm married to my darling husband of 20-some years, and I've got 2 daughters who are students, and 2 dogs, 2 cats, and a private practice that's been running on Zoom lately. So, but I enjoy a happy and a full life, and if that's a gift I can pass on to others, it's really something I would love to do. That in short.
Are you suffering from Zoom fatigue at all?
Mandi, I'm so hungry for people that whether I see them on Zoom or not, it's just that there's some level of detachment because you think that you are with people. And you remain hungry for people because you haven't touched them. You haven't seen if that blink in the eye, if it's a tear or laughter or naughtiness, So, because I'm still so hungry for people, I'm not yet fatigued from Zoom. But from next week, I'll be starting to see people in person. And from October, I've thought that I will throw a little party in my garden at home to celebrate spring.
Yeah, because it finally rained today, so we know it's spring. We know summer's on the way back. Would you define wellness for me, please? Or for all of us, rather.
Mandi, it's such a wide thing. I would almost want to start by what it is not. Sometimes, if I can use the analogy, not being rich or not being poor doesn't make you rich. And just in the same vein, not having a specific mental illness that's been diagnosed doesn't make you well. Well-being consists of so much more. It consists of the ability to have relationships, of really feeling happy, of doing well where you are, of enjoying your career, of being able to practice self-care, knowing when things are too much, doing well and feeling well, and being in balance in life most of the time. But at the same time, well-being doesn't suggest that horrible things don't happen to people with well-being. So who could ever have expected that we would have COVID-19 a year ago? And here, a lot of people with good well-being had to deal with the problems that came, everybody worldwide, with the problems that came with COVID-19. And then those people who are resilient and who have wonderful resources and personal strength, such as love and kindness and love of knowledge and temperance, those people have what I always refer to as flourishing under fire. So despite the fact that bad things happen, they are able to see the good and to still experience a good enough life that they can mean a lot to themselves and still a lot to others as well. So well-being, there is something such as financial well-being. I always joke and say I'd rather cry on a bicycle or in a Mercedes-Benz than on a bicycle.
Yeah.
But
I'd actually settle for a double cab. I'm proud.
There we go. I always think if we don't have financial wealth, if we are really materially not well off, we're poor, it's very difficult to maintain well-being when there's always just not enough. So financial well-being comes into this whole issue of well-being, but well-being is so much more, because I always challenge people to go and think about the last time they had a promotion, or they got an increase at work, or they found a new lover, or whatever is the thing in the moment that makes them feel good or feel rich. And then the minute people are used to those things, they are just not so wonderful anymore. You know, that 1,000 Rand or 10,000 a month, you earn more. You so quickly become used to it that it means nothing to you. So then we've got to find things that are more valuable and that makes us happy. Money helps us, makes life easier. And if you don't have it, you always say it will make you happy. But there are many more things, and
that's a bit of a shallow existence.
Yes, you know, that doesn't take account for being spiritual, living a life of kindness and gratitude, of enjoying beauty and nature, enjoying relationships. There's so much more to life that creates our well-being. But probably also, when we look, very often when we think of well-being, we only think that it's something that's in your mind and your heart and your spirit. Whereas scientific studies have shown to us that when people have well-being, they can live longer, they have better immunity, they sleep better. A whole lot of physical benefits occur when you have well-being. So it's absolutely worthwhile to invest in how good you are feeling and doing in the world.
And how do you go about doing that? With all the pressures today, financial pressures, emotional pressures, COVID-19 pressures, how does one create a feeling of well-being and maintain it?
No, Mandi, you know, some of the things I always talk about is emotional well-being. The fact that you choose the feelings that you have. And sometimes people say they can't choose. They just get angry or they just get sad and they can't stop and they can't help for that. But the minute we are rational enough to choose how we want to respond to a situation, and we create emotional well-being for ourselves, we choose to be happy and we find those ingredients that make us happy. I often, for my clients, draw a jug and I say, just put in 4 things here that could create happiness for you. And you let people think, because well-being is different things for different people. For some people, it's about being able to go on a walk or run each day, watching a movie every now and again, being with a loved one and eating seafood. You know, for some other people, it's about deep spiritual life, religion, um, sleeping well, exercising, reading a book, planting a garden. So well-being comprises of so many things, but it is attainable in almost any situation. And also, if you have well-being, it helps you, it sustains you when things are not well, when there's a COVID, when there's death, when something bad happens, that you don't go into such a deep depression. So in the book, we talk about coping with stress. We talk about self-care. We talk about career well-being. We talk about loads and loads of things such as your character strengths. How do you know what your character strengths are? How building on them helps you to experience well-being. So there's an incredible amount of things that can be done to sustain your well-being. But one of the things, we have to go through difficulties in life to be able to build some level of a resilience core. And resilience is what gives us that bounceability. So very often when we encounter problems, we want to say, go away. We don't want to. And yes, that's true. We just want sunny skies all the time. That's absolutely true. But it is the essence of resilience is in having had difficult experiences. And somebody said the other day, when we have resilience, it's like that diving plank of life. And the stronger your resilience core is, when you dive off that plank, the more flip-flops you can make in the air, the more somersaults you can make. You know, so resilience is not only about being tough and sticking it out when it's hard, but there's also a part of resilience that gives you joy and helps you enjoy life better and more, and helps you explore yourself as a human being, explore your relationships, explore where your support comes from in the world. So somebody just wrote the other day on Facebook, somebody who just recently read the book. It was not intended, first as a self-help book as such. Just wanted to share knowledge. If you call it a self-help book, all right. But she said it's a great self-help book she read for COVID-19, because for her it expressed issues about boundaries, your self-value, and boundaries are so important and such an essential part of well-being. The ability to say yes or no or not now, and how much. Because you spoke of Zoom fatigue now. And I see at home that I've got a husband who just can't stop. You know, he's working from home and he's generally a hard worker, but it's so convenient because he doesn't have to travel, and when he's into his work, he doesn't want to be distracted, so he doesn't get up for a cup of coffee and so on. And in the end, he sits with a spasm, and you know, he's over fatigued and so on and so on. So she actually said that reading the book and seeing how boundaries can play out actually assisted her a lot in this COVID-19 period. So that's just one aspect. But then you've got a guest tonight that I know and who's a dear friend of mine, Tia, also wrote a chapter about kindness and gratitude. So if COVID-19 or any other bad thing strikes in life, and we have those heart strengths such as gratitude and kindness, and we are still able to think, okay, we do have COVID. Many people have died in South Africa and worldwide. Many people are ill. Many people have lost their jobs. But here where I'm sitting right now, what is there that I can still be grateful about? This I learned from Tia. And the minute we can focus on gratitude as opposed to lack or something bad that happened, it changes around how we feel. And so, yeah, that's also part of well-being, finding those character strengths that define us, that make life worth living for us. The minute we use those in our work and in our relationships, wisdom is another one. Judgment, being fair, seeking knowledge, being curious, a love of beauty. They are all character strengths. And somehow people don't even know that strengths like that exist. And what is also true is the minute you are able to recognize these strengths and you start using them, it's like life flowers for you, because you're not trying to be who somebody else wants you to be. You're using your very own strengths that are innate to you, it's your personal beauty, I would say. And that really tends to make people very happy as well, in work, in life, where they go.
Doctor, your book is made up of about 18 chapters, I think it is. How did you go about selecting people to put in how did you choose the therapists and the doctors? And did you give them aspects to write on, or did they choose their own?
Mandi, it's so interesting. When I started writing, it was this formidable academic piece that I've drawn out of all those thousands of articles I told you about. And I just realized this is too much. People will not be able to read that. It is heavy reading stuff. And then I thought to myself, I know a lot of psychologists, being in the field myself, and I'm thinking that us as psychologists have a duty to the world out there to bring about change, to help people. And we are in a good position from a knowledge perspective, but also the fact that we live life too. We also have deaths and misery, and sometimes people don't pay us, or we have a car accident, or whatever, we have similar lives to everybody else in the world. So we relate to what people experience. And nothing is more interesting and captivates people more than real life experiences. So I can sit and write about well-being for 19 chapters, and people respond to that as well, and they say, they read books and they become so bored after a while. Whereas if you collect the different life experiences and professional experiences and thinking and the raw life experiences of people, there's a chance that other people will relate to that. But then I thought that if we only involve psychologists, it feels so much like a book, like a therapy book, like you're attending a therapy session, and I wanted it to be more than that. So I've involved teachers, lecturers, a person who's a marketing specialist in the financial sector. I've got a psychiatrist, a dietitian, an artist. So I've got a variety of people who wrote for me, and I chose those people they are all people that I know. So I know that either they've had a difficult life story that they can share in terms of the learning that brought about, or they are people with a wisdom that needs to be shared with the world. Or they are just incredibly wonderful people who always have something to share. And if you have something to share, how wonderful if you can be part of a book and you can share that with people, both as what you've written, but then also in a forum like this. I'm able to bring those authors to an audience to show you who they are and what they have to share. So that's how the book started, as a sort of academic literature that I wanted to write in an easier language and give out. Then my question to these people who wrote, I asked many more, but not everybody wants to, cooperate when you ask them to do something for you.
Put themselves out there.
Especially when you don't know what the end result is going to be. It's like planting a seed and not knowing whatever is going to happen. So it's really a leap of faith for these people who wrote, and it was a leap of faith for me as well. Because as I sat waiting for people to send whatever they wrote to me, I didn't know what anybody was going to send me. I wrote everybody a one-liner. I said, would you please write anything that could go into a book about well-being. It could also be about ill-being, because we can't understand well-being if we don't understand that it's got an opposite side.
Yeah.
So we don't just want to hear, yeah, lovely, life is wonderful. We need to know that people suffer and how they go beyond, how they get back to feeling happy again and feeling whole. So the stories was an absolute combination that it's like a cooking pot. It's the spiciest pot you've ever seen, but it's tasty beyond, this is to me, I'm completely subjective here, because as I started putting it together, I thought, oh, this is beautiful. It's not my book anymore. This book belongs to 18 authors who've all put their hearts and their minds and their guts into this thing, and they offer it to the reader. It's personal, it's real, it's authentic, and to me, it's come out magically. I've met wonderful people in this journey. Not only the authors who I have known and got to know better in this process, but also, I was introduced by one of the authors to somebody who designed the cover for us. I was introduced to somebody. Yeah, I thought so. I liked it a lot. You look at it and you see this head. It's so rational, all the things that happen in the mind.
I
And
love
then
that.
if you dig out that rich soil and it lands on good earth, and you've got this, we all have a child at heart somewhere if we go look for it. And that's the most beautiful part of any one of us. And if that earth lands on good soil and that person starts to plant and dig and make something, it was just this whole story that came up in my mind as the artist made it. And I met two beautiful editors who did a lovely job there. And then the book is in full color with color photos. And I've got the artist I spoke about who wrote for me. He really sketched well-being. His chapter is chapter 14. If he said, we called it, if all else fails, draw a zombie rabbit. And here's his first page, So it's colorful and it's serious. So it's from the authors that contributed came this just a richness that I've given the book to them. It's hardly my book. It's a book by 18 authors. My name stands on the front cover, but it's only because I put the glue in. Actually, I'm lying. I learned so much about books. There's no glue. Maybe there is a little bit, but this book was actually stitched. So it's also not a book that's going to fall apart. And after it eventually came together, I sat down and I read this book when it was in full color, edited, printed, and I was sitting with 2,000 copies at my house. And it's just been something lovely to hold on to. It is, I know it sounds so self-conceited to like something so much that you've been involved in, but honestly, it's something I would give people as a gift, not because I want to get rid of it, but because I love them and I want them to experience this book. I would give it as a gift.
And it's a book, baby. You should be proud of it. So you've got a third child, plus 2 dogs and 2 cats and a partridge and a pear tree.
Yeah, no, it is. It really is.
Doc, will you take us through
personal.
the chapters? So you've got chapter 1, The Gift and the Guilt, by Ellie Dakima Hansen. What is that?
Ellie is a psychologist by profession, but she also lectures at a university, and she's got a little son who's now in that stage of driving a mommy and a daddy mad because he's running around. He's 2. he's throwing tantrums, and he's busy. He's a busy man. So between a busy practice and having a married life and having family and having the university and students and your little child, she was writing about your career. If you love your career, it seems like a gift. But then sometimes you overwork so much that you compromise everything else. You compromise your relationships. You compromise having a glass of wine with a friend. You compromise those days that you stay in your pajamas and you eat cupcakes instead of eating salad and going to the gym. She writes eloquently about that and finding that balance so that the gift that you have of enjoying your work and being good at it can be balanced with a guilt so that you don't overwork and that you are still able to enjoy life thoroughly. I'm wondering, Mandi, would you mind if I go through the chapters? If I talk you through them?
I'd love you to go through. I'm just going to let you talk then, okay?
I just want to say I'm so proud of the titles of each chapter. I didn't think them out myself. I had an editor, and us two sat together, and he's a very creative person, and many of them she actually came up with, and I just find them so well suited to the content, and it grabs your attention. So chapter 2 is a tale of too many tales, and this was written by an attorney by the name of Alette Bale. She both is in private practice and she also works at a law clinic, and she balances that with having a child with a disability and a child who's extremely talented on the sports field and academically, but has ADHD. And how she writes about how busy life can be and how she drives around with boxes of work in the boot of her car, and how coming home, it's a real rush to get ready for the next day. So there's never a minute of just some enjoyment or catching up with each other. It's do. So there's a theme that comes through the book as well that says somewhere we've got to stop this human doing and remind ourselves that we are human beings. So this is called the Tale of Too Many Tales, as she refers to the tales of each job catching up with each other. So the minute you've finished with your job as a mom and you've put your kids to bed, then tomorrow's, whatever are your priorities and your responsibilities at work tomorrow, continue. Sometimes you sleep, sometimes you don't. And then she ends her chapter by saying, it's not the same for everyone. Sometimes going out into the bush for a little bit of time, maybe a day or two, by herself works wonders for her. Other times, she just has to have a visit with friends, and still other times, a good bit of exercise does the job for her to relax. So all of these people tell you, not only of their problems and what they do, but they have humor. They are people like us. They relate. And then they tell us too, what are the sorts of things and how they do it to assist them to have some well-being. Sorry, Mandi, you said?
No, I'm saying to reconnect with self, basically. Just that so little bit of time out. Yeah.
So much so. And then we've got Dr. Marlene Arendt. She's a clinical psychologist, and she writes, how would your life be different if? And she starts off by saying, what if you watched rugby regularly and you wore your green t-shirt and you made love more often, you drank champagne, you cook a wonderful meal, you tell somebody what had happened instead of bottling up. And it doesn't need to be a psychologist. What if you called a friend? What if you reconnect with an old family member? What if you took a long stroll with your 2 dogs and everybody is happy? They played in the mud and they splashed on you. And for one moment you go, oh, but then you go and wash and the sun is shining outside. And So she reflects on all the advice that we often give to others. And you don't have to be a psychologist to give advice. Mandi, maybe you speak to your child, or maybe maybe Jackie or somebody who's listening. You might have a thing that you always say to people: go sleep, go eat
Have a
something
nice
nice,
bath.
go, yes, relax, breathe deep, whatever. She says we know all those things, and we're so ready to give it to others because we know they work. And yet, how would life be different if we start practicing that for ourselves? And then she speaks about those things we could be doing for ourselves to live a life of wellness, of emotional wealth and feeling good. Then this is about, so this book is for old and young and rich and poor and for the whole spectrum, because the next author is a retired gentleman who used to work for Sanlam, and he did recruitment and selection and training for them, Chris Jacobs. And his chapter is called My Retirement Broom. He starts off the chapter by telling us about how exciting it was the other day when the lady who does domestic work in his house came to him and she said the broom is broken. They'll have to find a new broom. And this whole planning and the whole excursion, and how in between finding the right price and the right product and dressing well for the occasion and all of that. You sit in a restaurant and somebody that you know passes by, and eventually you end up eating, and then the day is over. But there's still one shop you have to visit because you're not sure that you'll have the best broom if you didn't visit that shop. So he speaks in a humorous way about making life good when you have gone on retirement, and how not to be. His last lesson about the broom buying is not to be a navel gazer. He says, take pleasure in life. Don't sit there and wait for death. Life can be full of joy right up to the very end. Don't give up when you retire. We only have this one life, don't we? And then he quotes an author who said, if you are granted 20 or 80 years, be grateful for that. Death lies ahead. You just don't know in which form the old scoundrel awaits you. But he also writes about, as you grow older, and I certainly experienced that, your face tends to hang more than when you were younger.
Gravity takes its toll.
Gravity. And he says, put a smile on your face, don't look sour. He says, don't mingle with grumpy people. It simply just makes you feel grumpy and down and feel that the world owes you something when you mix with grumpy people. And so this is where I come from when I say it's for old and young and for people in different stages of life. The next chapter is by somebody who chose to be anonymous, and she calls the chapter Toss and Turn and Prayer and Psalms, and writes this chapter about work life and how difficult, how she and a colleague sometimes sat in different toilet cubicles speaking to each other about how hard their day was, and crying in the toilet cubicle. And the boss that they shared previously used to be a fantastic guy. So they couldn't understand what was going on. And they always had to bear the grunt, and life was so difficult. Now she came to write this chapter was a friend of hers had a child who got cut by a bottle. And after they thought it should have healed, there were shards and he had to be operated and the shards had to be taken out of his hand. So she compared that to having sat with the shards of this agony of the job, and how that followed her even into a new job until she took the time to sit and figure out what was it that's causing her to cry so much. What is this boss hurt inside of her? What has he touched on that made her so fragile? And what is it that she needed to do to recover? And she speaks about nights, sitting up being awake, not being able to sleep. And I just always feel, when I haven't been able to sleep, I'm not my best self. And this has been going on for a long time for her. And she finds her resolve. And she says for her, it was in really being able to let go through making it a matter of prayer. This is in her case. Then the next chapter is written by Christo van der Westhuizen, who's a psychologist, and the chapter is called No Overdraft Without Limits. So if I can just share something of his chapter, he says, in life, you cannot consistently give what you have not at first received. Bank accounts go into overdrafts, and overdrafts have limits, and then there is no more. And this is also a bit of a theme in the book. I also always, whoever wants to listen, and if you don't want to listen, you're going to hear it some more. But I would always say we fill our car's tanks. We fill our cupboards with groceries. We are always filling all sorts of things that is the right thing to do. And so that we won't run into a situation that's difficult. But regarding our emotions and how we deal with our feelings, how strong we are, how well we are, some people just don't fill themselves on the emotional and spiritual level as they fill all other things. They fill their skins, they fill their nails, they fill their growths, we fill, and some quite important things we forget to fill. And then it's important to understand that there's no overdraft without limits. Then chapter 7 is called Recharging Batteries and Designating Boundaries. This is also an anonymous author. She's a teacher. And she says, she quotes a newspaper where it said that teachers just sit around and it's actually a lazy job, and people complain about teachers, and they say they just do admin in the office and gossip about the parents and the kids, and parents often look down upon teachers. She says she's heard so many times, those who can do and those who can't teach. Which is so sad. And she tells about, she says, somewhere between the perceptions of the teacher as a lazy creature and the shaper of lives lies the truth of many South African teachers who suffer from occupation-related stress, burnout, and or depression. And then she writes something beautiful. Oh, she writes every author writes many beautiful things. She goes on to speak about how the teachers who surround her maintain their well-being and how it's different for younger and older people very often. But then she goes on to speak about how she personally recharges. And one of the things is she sets boundaries, because she says she doesn't have the emotional energy to give every child, more than 130 that she encounters daily close to her. She can't have a hug for each of them.
Incredibly draining.
So she writes about this. Despite my efforts to maintain physical space between me and the learners, there are always those who worm their way through any barricades and deep into my heart. These are never the richest, prettiest, or cleverest. On the contrary, they are often the ones who are most in trouble or who struggle with the work. This is someone who fills my day with his or her happiness and self-acceptance. Someone who secretly makes me feel ashamed about any negative attitude. It's always a child who I can learn something from and who I think about first when it's difficult to get out of bed in the morning and go to work. Each year there's only one such a little gift, as though life knows that one is enough. And then if one is spiritual and spirituality comes out so well in this book, you accept that one. You don't look for two, and you know what's enough, you know what's too much. And we also know that too much in life can actually make us sick. And then she speaks about humor.
I'm going to stop you there going through the chapters. You very much deliver the sense that the book is really about happiness and well-being and maintaining that kind of balance in your life. I do want to open the floor to questions. If anybody has any questions, please post them in the chat box, and I'll relay them to Erika. Why did you leave your chapter till the end? Why is yours chapter 18? Why not open?
Mandi, I just enjoyed the life stories so much. When people write about what's real. So I felt those needed priority, those people's real, authentic stories. Whereas chapter 18 is what I call that getting all the cream off of what research offers us about well-being. But it's still not a story. It's a formal reading. I think it's a very helpful reading, but it's still formal. It gives you lots of facts, and it's not a story. And for that purpose, I wanted to include it. There's 193 resources that I used and quoted in this book. And to just put them in a first chapter, I was so scared people would lose courage and wouldn't want to finish the book, because I didn't want to make it an academic book. I wanted to make it a book for you and me and my brother and my mother, who's old, and anybody must lay their hands on it and enjoy it and learn from it and not want to put it down. And I think the last chapter may be placed in exactly the right place, so that people first attach their own life stories to the life stories that's been told, and then get that, let's call it the recipe for well-being, the serious reading of the facts.
Is there anything in the book that's a guideline towards well-being?
I would say
a 12-step program, for
example.
example.
It is to capture it as though it's a cake recipe is a very difficult thing. But I would always say there are things that we know that are confirmed in this book. For well-being, we need to look after our bodies. We need to sleep well, we need to eat well, we need to exercise to the extent that we are able to do that. And then when I say that, if we want to have well-being, we need emotional well-being. But if being well physically gives us guilt, or a whole lot of things in life gives us guilt, we cannot experience well-being. Guilt kills happiness, guilt kills joy and abundance. So a guilt-free life, learning to live in abundance, to accept things the way they are, to be mindful, to know that you are body, you are brain, and that if you stimulate yourself and you have diversity of experiences in life, that will help you a lot. We have a heart of all of our feelings. We have a spirit. Our spirit definitely not only deals with being religious, but it also deals with appreciating nature. It deals with mindfulness, how to breathe deep, how to relax. So I'd almost say, if we think about well-being, it is something like a bicycle with two round wheels. It really can go. And if we lack physically, spiritually, cognitively, or on any one of these levels, we tend to have one round wheel and a bit of a triangle of a wheel. So this bicycle can't go forward in life.
Yeah, it's not a very smooth ride.
Yeah, so I'd want to say we need to look at after all the parts of ourselves, and we give lots of advice in the book about how to nurture. It's about self-nurturance. In Afrikaans, self-nurturance translates into Afrikaans in self-vertroeteling, like a soft stroke on yourself. You know, we speak of self-compassion, of just looking after all the parts that make up the wonderful you. So that is well-being. The
Is the book
scales of
available?
life sit in balance.
Sorry for interrupting. Is the book available in Afrikaans or just in English?
No.
Now, what's a nice Afrikaans girl doing printing a book in English?
You know, Mandi, I was thinking about that many times, but your Afrikaans audience is so much more limited. I thought big when I put this together. I was thinking international, corporate, neighbors, family, friends, everybody. In the end, it's much more difficult to sell a book. You know, I must tell you that. You know, it's very hard work. But I'm hopeful. I'm always a hopeful, and there will be a time and a space to write in Afrikaans as a boeremeisie for Afrikaans people. But this was a book for everyone, and that's why I needed to write it in English.
Fair enough.
Good English. It was edited by Tracy. What is Tracy's surname? She is so English that she's in England. I wanted to make sure that my boeremeisie Afrikaans doesn't filter through so much that English-speaking people would be offended. So
I haven't been offended yet, so you're doing very well. My Afrikaans would offend you to the core.
Oh, no. Again, recently the debate came up, is offense taken or is it given? And I also think that's a little bit part of our well-being, to accept, and that's part of mindfulness as well, to accept things as they are and not necessarily how we want them to be or in a perfect world and that sort of thing.
I know, but it is soul destroying when a person crucifies your language, you know, when you put it through the mill. I know people are like quite happy when, you know, you try to speak their language. But I actually get quite embarrassed when I've now like put it through the mincer. It comes out the other end, a garbled mess. So I tend to avoid it. Although I do have customers, I'm quite happy for my customers to talk to me in Afrikaans if they don't mind me responding in English. That you know, that makes for an easier conversation.
Yeah, so maybe the short answer is basically the fact that I wanted to reach as many people as possible rather than a small readers public.
Thank you. Are there no questions for the doctor? Kerry, you're a teacher. Surely you've got a question. Natalie? Thea, how can we get a bit of input from you, seeing you have a chapter in the book? What's your chapter on, Thea?
My chapter is on positivity and that I have a sexy husband.
Oh, baby.
Come on. It's true, Erika. What do you think?
Yeah, it can't be more true. If I didn't have such a sexy husband, I would have made eyes for yours. Tia, you being humble. Tia wrote an incredible and a beautiful chapter, and it is based on kindness. And she speaks about one of her major supports in life is, in a very, very busy life, is her darling husband. And the things that he brings to her life. You know, he brought the song from Karen Zoid. Tia, what is it called? Is it Beautiful?
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, so Tia writes about her husband dedicating this song to her. This is part of well-being, you know, what other people bring to you and your ability to receive the gift, not just the that others bring it, but you can take it, knowing that you are worthy as a human being. And she then says, remember, he loves me. And in love, we are beautiful to the person who looks at us. And Tia and I have a little bit of a joke that we share amongst ourselves. In the professions, in the medical professions, it can be very formal. So when people end their letters, they would never do it with kind regards. And I've never ever ended an email or a letter with any other phrasing than kind regards, because that's what I mean and that's what I want to give to the world. I want to give everybody kind regards. So when Tia and I started being colleagues, she saw this whole thing that I would write to her sometimes. I would write kind regards. And I think, Tia, if you don't mind, you can tell.
What happened is I started using kind regards at the end of my letters too. So it's this very formal medical report, kind regards. And then I started getting letters back from other doctors. So I think we started a whole chain reaction in Joburg with kind regards at the bottom of letters from different doctors. So it would be very, very formal, kind regards. And I started it because Erika started it. And just that gratefulness that you have to have in life for the small things to be able to live. So my chapter is about gratefulness and kind regards, and then that I have a sexy husband.
Yeah, I've seen him. I must come and have a closer look. Huh? I was too intent on checking up on you and collecting food that I didn't really notice, but I will come past and ring the doorbell again and have a closer look if you don't mind.
You can look, but you can't touch.
Damn it. I want to meet your new baby. That's what I do want to meet.
You see her picture. I will bring her where she is. Let me find her.
Thea's got a new puppy. Must be a couple of weeks now, I imagine. And he was too cute. She sent me a picture of when he was little. So I think he's probably gorgeous at this point. But all puppies are gorgeous.
Maybe from what Tia says, this whole thing of kindness is contagious, and well-being is contagious. So the more you have, the more you get, and the more you surround yourself with people who are like that. And I also want to see the puppy now.
I'm going to put her on the spotlight here.
Baby. Hi, baby.
Hello. Just has eyes for mommy, not for the rest of us. It's a pug, hey, Thea?
He's a pug.
And how old is she now? Is it a he or a she?
It's a she. She's 14 weeks. And she is
very... She's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Thank you for sharing with us.
Because I want to run down the street calling fire, fire, and see you guys respond.
I'm not responding. Oh, look at that. Isn't that absolutely beautiful? What a way to end a talk. Doctor. Unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted.
You unmuted. Thank you. Well, I just wanted to thank you. It's been absolutely delightful. How much is the book?
The book is 200 Rand if you order it on the internet, delivered at your house. So if you go to drerikahitge.com, you'll find the book there. So it is drerikahitge.com.
I'll share that on the group.
.com.
Okay.
And if you are like me and only reads electronic versions, it's also available on Amazon.
I don't like reading electronically. I'd much rather have a book in my hand. I enjoy that sensation.
Yeah,
although some books are too heavy these days.
Yeah, the link is on Amazon, but I would really want people to buy a hard copy. There's no price difference. It's not a thick book. This is not a heavy one. It's 142 pages, and I enjoyed it. You know, I enjoyed it off when I saw it the first time. So I hope that people will. And then, can I just say, I feel so humbled every time that I'm able to tell people about this, knowing that it's not my work, but it's the work of many people. And I find it so endearing in actual fact that people are willing to sit and listen to somebody who's a novice at writing, and who decide to give this time to listen to somebody else speaking. So I truly appreciate every person who came here this evening.
The zombie rabbits are
And
better
thanks to
on the hard.
you.
Wat sê jy, Thea?
The zombie rabbits are better on the hard copy.
Fair enough. Zombie rabbits. I'm definitely going to read that. Definitely going to have a look at that page. Ladies, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting this evening. I wish you everything of the best with the book, and to everybody who contributed, it's absolutely fantastic. It's been wonderful chatting to you. Tomorrow evening, we are going mountain climbing with the man who has summited, I think, all the big summits on all the different continents. I must be honest, I haven't done the reading yet. I know that he is short a few fingers because there's some gruesome pictures of frostbite. Eek. So Ben Swart, we're chatting him tomorrow at 7 o'clock because our lights are going out at 8. So thank you everybody this evening. Thank you for joining us. Doctor, thank you. Have a fantastic evening and everything of the best with the book. I hope it's a bestseller. I will share the link with everybody just now. And everybody have a great evening. Good night and stay warm. Bye.
Bye-bye.